Speaking of XBO, we actually have a really great woman in technology and woman in transportation joining us today. It's Meagan Fitzsimmons. She's actually the first Chief Compliance Officer for GXO, XBO spinoff. We'll have her dive into that here in a second, and their Chief of ESG as well. Meagan, thank you so much for joining us today. I'm happy to have you here with us.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm thrilled to be here.
Yeah, this is perfect. It's we've had some great leadership already from XPO, and I'm really excited to see what the spinoff is up to. And for some of our listeners, I think they're still trying to understand exactly what the point of the spinoff is, why it's important that we remove these two elements of the XPO family from each other. Could you dive into a little bit more of why it was important for GXO to create its own entity, to focus on? It almost feels like the future of what supply chain is going to be.
Yeah, I think so. So, following the spin, GXO, which was born on August 2nd, is the world's largest pure play contract logistics provider. And I think the way to conceptualize that is the primary thing that we do is focus within the four walls of the warehouse. So it's everything from packaging outbound shipments to managing returns to doing additional value-added services within the warehouses, such as repairs or kitting or personalization in some cases. So that's really our focus. We have over 900 locations around the world. We have over 100,000 team members. And our customers are some of the world's biggest companies, really huge, Fortune 100 companies across a variety of industries and verticals, including fashion, food and beverage, industrials, technologies, and e-commerce. And I really do think, it is the future. It's a very exciting time to be in this industry.
Yeah. Oh, go for it, Kaylee. Oh, well, the one thing I was going to say is, oh, you're
being
good.
in
You're
that
good.
vein of
Okay, sorry about that. The one thing I was going to say when talking about the future, it almost feels like the area that can be optimized the most, right? That has like the most area in regard of like investment and change and opportunity when improving and making sure that at the end of the day, goods are getting to the end consumer when they can. And so that's what I personally am super excited about. And ESG and compliance is such an interesting the togetherness of titles. Can you explain what exactly ESG means to GXO as a company and what principles that you've recently come out with your first ESG report, which is, first of all, incredible. Just started in August, already having this report out. What is the big principles that you're hoping to live by during this?
So the way that I describe ESG and really my whole role in terms of ESG and compliance together, we at GXO really see that as our how. So we're very focused on the what, we're very focused on delivering results, but we're equally focused on how we deliver those results. And that's really what ESG embodies. We deliver those results in keeping with our values, which are to be safe, to be inclusive, to make an impact. We do it with a focus on our people and our partners and our planet. And we want to make sure we're doing it in a way that's ethical, responsible, and sustainable. And that's really everything that ESG encompasses. And as you said, we're very proud. We released our first ESG report last week. I encourage everyone to go to our gxo.com/ESG and check it out. We also have an adorable little animated video that goes along with it that gives a little bit of a look inside the ESG warehouse of the future, as well as some more information there. But it's really, we're starting the journey. We're a new organization, as you said, but we're starting it strong because it really is a focus. It's a focus for us as a company. It's a focus for our employees, and it's a focus for our stakeholders.
I will say of all the ESG reports I have seen, this one seemed very transparent in what goals that you want to achieve and all the areas that you could focus on and what you decide as a company to really highlight. If we could bring up their matrix really quick, this was really interesting to me. I'm interested in how you came up with this ranking of importance. Was it a conversation with stakeholders? Was it with shippers, carriers? How exactly did you go about ranking these and then starting to attack them one on one?
So this was a very robust process that we went through with the help of some external consultants. It's in keeping with various ESG frameworks, including GRI, SASB, and TCFD. And what we did was we went out and we conducted interviews. We conducted interviews with a mix of internal and external stakeholders, as well as did an online survey process. And this included everyone from board members to corporate executives to people working on site at our 900 sites around the world, to customers, to investors. It included an in-depth review and benchmarking of documents that are out there. What is everything that's really important to all of our stakeholders? And then we took all that information, and there was some variety, and you'll see in our report, in terms of each group of stakeholders, what was sort of most important to them. But these were the key issues that we identified through that process as being most important. And this graph shows how they were ranked by our various stakeholders. And all of these issues are important to GXO, and these are all issues on which we're working and we have initiatives. But really, what we wanted to do is make sure we were prioritizing the issues where GXO could have the most impact over the next few years. It's an ongoing process. We're always focused on continuous improvement. And so we'll continue to reassess. But this is where our stakeholders have told us we should focus our most efforts of where we can have the most impact in the short term.
Awesome.
So, Megan, I'm interested, of course, in those two really high placed ones, the carbon greenhouse gas emissions and then the diversity and inclusion initiatives, which I feel like when people think ESG initiatives, those are the two that stick out most in people's minds. Why do you think that stakeholders care so much about specifically those two things? And do you kind of think that they're almost like umbrella terms for main types of goals like this?
So I think on one hand, it's the right thing to do, right? I think it's an important focus, and I think that's one of the reasons that stakeholders care, and that's one of the reasons that we care. I also think they're highly visible issues, and I think they're issues where people feel very personally, right? There's a real professional impact here as well as a real personal one. We're very focused on being an employer of choice. We're very focused on being a company that employees want to work for and that customers want to work with. And because of our unique relationship with our customers, each of our sites is really highly customized to them. It's very much a partnership with our customer, and we work with them on also helping them attain their own ESG goals. So it's really a focus, I think, across all industries, and a focus for us to make sure we're creating that environment in that space where we're doing right by our people and by the planet at large. And I think the emissions and diversity, inclusion, and belonging are areas where people feel very strongly. And I think that's correct. I feel the same way.
You brought up goals earlier and being able to put values behind each of these areas and make sure that you're meeting actual attainable goals that make a difference in both of those spaces. What type of goals have you set for GXO in those two areas, and in the carbon emissions and then the inclusion aspect? And have you hit any of those milestones already?
Yeah, good question. So in the E space, in the emission space, we came out right before the spin with 5 environmental goals that are ambitious environmental goals related to LED coverage, related to emissions reduction, related to carbon neutrality, and landfill diversion. And we're actually making really great progress against those goals. And we are, as you said, we're very transparent. We include that information in our ESG report. We are effectively there in terms of landfill diversion. Our goal was 80% landfill diversion by 2025, and we're already at 79%. So obviously looking to continue. We're about halfway there for our goal for LED penetration across our facilities. And then we're on track. We're making good progress for our other goals, which are set to 2030 and 2040. And we have detailed roadmaps in place that we're working to implement, again, around the world to make sure we get there. With respect to diversity, inclusion, and belonging, GXO hired our first ever vice president of diversity, inclusion, and belonging, Letitia King James. We brought her on in the fall, and she's been very hard at work across all of her stakeholders, developing a really impressive belonging network, a diversity, inclusion, belonging plan, some of which is already launched, some of which we're excited will be launching later this year. And so we will continue to share sort of more detailed goals around all of those aspects, but we are well on our way for those key areas.
So, Megan, you've spent a ton of your career in compliance and in this compliance space. And I think that it can almost be kind of difficult to be in your role, right? Because you're making the rules, you're setting the rules, and it's hard to be in that spot, to always constantly be the rule maker. How do you consistently set these goals and these rules and these compliance standards that are fair and that are equitable, but that still get people to take action on them?
It's a great question. And I think for many people, compliance can be a bit of a scary word, right? It sort of conjures up, I think, the feeling of getting called into the principal's office a little bit, and it can make people a little bit nervous. I am of the mindset always that you do catch more flies with honey rather than with vinegar. So I am really focused on collaborating and partnering with the business. As I said, my job is and always has been to focus on the how. But in order to do that, I have to make sure I'm also focused on the why and communicating that why to the business. So this is why this matters. This is why it's important. Here's some of the risks and rewards that are involved in this is not just we're making a rule and we're pushing it out because I'm a lawyer and I love rules. Here are the reasons why we have these rules, right? And having conversations to make sure that those parameters, those goals, those rules, all the governance structures are appropriate for the business. The compliance and the ESG program that's right for GXO today is not going to be right for a different company today, is not going to be right necessarily for GXO in the future. It all goes to that continuous improvement and making sure we're always assessing what is working for the needs and the risks of the business. And so for me, I really enjoy having that relationship within my organization. I used to work at a law firm where I did this externally, and that's a different relationship. I like being part of the business. I like to travel and sit down with people and understand what are the concerns, what are the risks, what are the needs, to make sure that we're really meeting them where they are and communicating to the business and really engaging the business in the program and in the corporate governance structure.
I love that. It's really about finding the businesses what's your why, right? And I guess the best part about this podcast is we get to really humanize the leaders that are making such great change. And for yourself, I guess, what is your why? Why is it important for you to take on this role and be one of the first leaders in the industry to be an ESG officer?
Yeah, it's a really exciting space. I think there's so much opportunity, not just within this industry, but within ESG more broadly, to help be a leader. To be part of creating some industry leading standards, not just for our business, but to partner with our customers to work on things like that. We give some examples within our report of really exciting things that we're doing. We have bee colonies at some of our sites to increase biodiversity. At some of our customers, we have not only zero landfill sites, but where we work to grind up waste and repurpose them to be playground flooring. It's so exciting, and there are so many opportunities, not only to do right by our company and our employees and our stakeholders and investors, but to really do the right thing for the world at large and for the planet. And I think that's what's so exciting, and it's an area where I think more and more employees are focused and they want to work with companies that care about this. And so I'm really proud to get to be a part of it.
That's amazing.
Right now is the biggest opportunity for leadership overall in this space, not even necessarily in the ESG space and compliance space, but kind of just overall? What do you think that executives in the freight transportation industry have a really big opportunity to capitalize on? And how can they take either lessons by looking at you and the standards that you set at GXO with compliance and ESG, take those lessons and put them forth into their own business practices?
A great question. I think this has maybe historically been a space that's been a little bit less visible. It's a lot of what works behind the scenes, right? You want to sort of like your hot water heater, you want to turn it on and have the water be hot, but you don't necessarily think about everything that goes into it. And I think with all of the focus on supply chain, especially over the past few years, it's a really good opportunity to draw a little bit more attention to here's what happens behind the scenes, right? Here's what goes on, for example, within the four walls of that warehouse. And here's how, when you click that button online, the whole journey of your product to your house, and then, over a third of goods get returned. As those goods get returned, how do they get repurposed? How do they get back in the hands of a consumer? How do we minimize waste? I think it's a really interesting opportunity for the average consumer to start thinking about those things and learning everything that goes into what we do, everything that goes into outsourcing and logistics generally, and then all of the opportunities that are there, right? To the earlier discussion I think this is the future, and we all have a role to play in terms of shaping where that goes.
And speaking of that, the reason Great Quarter Gals is here is because we wanted to open up a space where women could ask questions and see female leaders in executive positions, because we are seeing more women enter the space, but we are seeing them slowly take these executive roles. What advice would you give women who are, love logistics, love transportation, but just don't know how to go about getting higher up in the ranks so they can have a bigger impact on their organizations? What advice would you give them based on your career so far?
Yes, so I did spend a lot of my career in spaces where I was maybe the only woman in the room. And so I recognize that that can absolutely be intimidating. But I think it does help to find role models and to find people in that space who can support you. We have created here a company wide network and a belonging group where we're focusing on nurturing female talent within the organization. We've doubled our female employees at the VP and above level within the past couple of years. I think more and more companies are starting to recognize the vital importance of diversity and having that diversity of experience and voices within the room. So I think it helps to have those networks. It helps that if an organization has that infrastructure, and also has female leaders who are committed to mentoring people within that space, which I think is vitally important. I've been lucky throughout my career to work with so many amazing female leaders that I've learned so much from, both personally and professionally. And I think having those informal and formal networks are incredibly important.
Definitely.
I love that we ended on that point, because it's something that obviously me and Grace are both super passionate about, which is why we put the show together in the first place. So Meagan, thank you so much for joining us today. I'm excited to get a look at the XPO facility that I'll be headed to in Little Rock on Thursday. If people want to reach out to you and learn a little bit more about what you guys are doing at GXO, where can they go to do that?
So they can go to gxo.com/ESG and they can see our first report, watch this great video, and get more information there. People can also always contact us directly at ESG at gxo.com.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Megan, for being on the show. And we'll have to have you on again later in the year and see how everything is going.
I would love that. Thank you so much for having me.